Please, once you join the meeting, try to mute yourself immediately. That's part of communication etiquette. Please confirm that my screen is visible.
Yeah, it is visible.
Sorry. Okay, so welcome to today's session. And we'll be basically looking at understanding the job market and also how we can analyze job adverts. I'm not sure how many of us are currently job hunting or unemployment, trying to find better opportunities. How many of us are still students and all that, but this skill set is a bit necessary for everyone because it forms a foundation for an entry into the job market. For many of us who have been in the journey of job search, I know at some point we felt like we are doing everything right, but still not moving forward. You've studied, you gained skills, you prepare CV, you apply, and somehow you still feel like nothing is happening, right? So no response, no interview, no explanations, and basically silence. And that silence, it can be very loud. Because in that silence, questions start to form. Am I good enough? Is there something I'm missing? Why does it seem easier for others and not me? And slowly that silence begins to turn into doubt. And you doubt your ability, your direction, your future. Today, I want to challenge that entire experience, not by motivating you, but by giving you clarity, because sometimes what looks like failure is actually a misalignment. From the start of this fellowship, we've looked at a number of things. And the start of today's session basically is the start of pillar 3 of the Build Your Best Self Fellowship. We've worked on mindset, discipline, resilience, identity. And for most of us, we've been growing internally because some of the things that we learn here are things that we've been applying in our everyday life. So today we step into something different. And that something is how the world sees you. Because you can grow deeply, but if you are not policed or positioned correctly, the world will not recognize it. So today's session is basically to make a shift from a personal development to a professional positioning, from self-awareness to market awareness, from growth to opportunity alignment. As we go through this session, it will help you to understand how the job market actually works today, what employers are truly looking for when they recruit, how to interpret job advertisements strategically, how to position yourself as a very strong candidate, and why this is important for you because, yes, as we know, unemployment rate is very high, even in our context in South Sudan. There are so many people who are already qualified enough. And so competition is high for the available opportunities. So it's important for you to position yourself so that you get seen by recruiters. It's also important because for most of us who have been applying to a number of jobs without success, we get to understand what are the things that we've been doing wrongly that we can correct going forward. It's also important because we feel that we are qualified, but nobody gets to see us. So how do we get them to see us? You'll also get to understand why you've never gotten a feedback, where you've never been invited for an interview or something like that. That's why this session is important for you. The major problem is that for most candidates, they are not clear on what the employers expect when they run an advert or when they are trying to fill a vacancy. Another problem is the misinterpretation of the job requirements. Most of us, when we see an advert, we run, quickly to say, what is the position? Yeah, I have this background. Let me apply. You apply. You've not taken time to basically understand what is the actual requirement for this job in detail, right? And so that becomes a problem because we cannot position ourselves for this position. And then we do a lot of generic applications without any alignment. And that means that we miss out on being selected by any recruiter, being visible, being seen. The shift that we are making today is this. We are moving away from I'm looking for a job to I understand how to position myself for these opportunities. So that is the shift that you have to make today. Right. So most of the applications fail because as we apply for this job, we intend to apply as for as many jobs as we can without fully understanding the requirements of the job. Some of us use the same set of CVs and cover letters to apply for every application. For every job, use the same CV, you use the same cover letter you sent. And then we are interested in saying how many jobs I've applied for instead of the quality of the application. Some of us apply based on the job title, not the job requirement. So if you see the title of the job, you are saying, this is in line with what I've studied, so you apply. But you've not taken time to understand, okay, what is the requirement? Because different titles in different places, organizations, companies may mean different things, right? An officer position in the UN is not the same as an officer position in an NGO. You get. So if you see just the title and just go ahead and apply, you'll miss out on how you should have positioned yourself better for that opportunity. And then some of us ignore the required skills and competencies. Even if it is clearly listed, sometimes we end up ignoring these things. And when we ignore that, our applications constantly get rejected. And some of us don't even prepare for these applications. We just, we see the advert, we apply, right? Without proper preparation. And the more we continue to do that, we get no response from the employers. We get a lot of rejection. And, because there are so many applications, you're not able to get direct feedback in terms of how your application fared against the rest of the applicants. You also don't get shortlisted for these opportunities, not get invited for these interviews, right? And then in time, you start feeling frustrated and confused because you're questioning yourself. What is it that you're doing wrong? Is it that other people are better than you are? You get. So you start feeling frustrated. And it's a matter of time because before you lose confidence, because you feel like whatever it is that you're trying to do is not yielding the results that you want. It's important for us to know that employers don't just ignore you randomly. Recruiters are not necessarily unfair without a reason. The issue is often in misalignment and not lack of effort. For you to be shortlisted, for you to be called for an opening or be given an opportunity, there should be a very strong alignment between the vacancy that is out there and you, or how you've positioned yourself. What's missing with most of us is the clear understanding of the job requirements. Strategically positioning ourselves in terms of our skill competencies. We don't position ourselves properly. We also miss out on the ability to match our profile to the role. Because, like I said, we are in a hurry to apply for this role. So, we miss out on how we should match everything about us to fit into the role that the recruiter is trying to fill. Some of us also do not have the awareness of what the employers are screening for. So the problem is not always that we are being rejected. It is because we are applying without understanding. For most of us, our intention is to apply for as many jobs as possible and hoping that at some point we are going to land the opportunity. We are interested in the titles rather than what is required or what the job entails. For most of us, we're interested in having one CV that we've not updated for the last 2, 3 years, and we use that for all our applications. And we hope that, yes, at some point we will get selected. And so we sit and wait for the opportunities. If you compare this with what people maybe within your network are doing differently that are pushing opportunities closer to them, is that they have the ability to analyze every advert before they apply. They focus on how they can align themselves to the job, not just that they have met the eligibility criteria. They are able to tailor their CV and application to each role, not using one generic CV for all the jobs that you're applying for. They also position themselves as a solution. They position themselves as a solution for the employer. And they also don't apply for every opportunity that they see. They apply intentionally and selectively because it takes a lot of effort for you to actually apply for these jobs. You need a lot of resources to apply for a job. So if you are basically applying and applying without being selective, at some point you will get tired, you get exhausted because you're applying for the sake of applying, because your intention is to apply for as many jobs as possible. But you don't sit down to invest your resource in terms of maybe time properly, right? You are basically rushing through everything. So you are not applying intentionally. You end up wasting a lot of your time. Put a comparison between a traditional candidate and a strategic candidate. Basically, everything that we've talked about earlier on in the previous slide. A traditional candidate is the one that hopes to get feedback because, yeah, they don't sit to understand in details what is required by a job, right? But rather focuses on applying for as many jobs as possible and basically doing a lot of generic applications and hopes to get feedback. But a strategic candidate is one that applies intentionally and selectively for jobs, focuses on the quality of their applications and not how many applications they've applied for. And they are also able to tailor their applications and CVs for specific roles and position themselves for impact. And that's why the chances of getting feedback, getting shortlisted, getting interviewed, and probably getting offers is very high compared to traditional candidates. When employers advertise for a position, they are looking for someone who actually understands the role, someone who can solve a problem, By the way, every role that you see being advertised is a problem. So the employers are basically looking for someone who can solve that problem. So there is a gap that exists in that company, in that organization. So they are trying to find you to come and solve that problem. So they are looking for someone who can demonstrate relevant skills, someone who can solve the problem, someone who understands the role, and someone who is aligned with the organization. So when you are applying as a candidate, you are not just applying for that job, you are presenting yourself as a solution to a need. And this need is that of the employer. So you are telling the employer, you know what? I'm the best solution that you've got. And this is how I intend to solve the problems that you have. So it's very important for you to understand what employers are really looking for when they put out an advert. Let's quickly understand today's job market. In today's job market, there are very common characteristics. This is world over, of course, and you can bring this down to South Sudan. It's basically the same thing. There is high competition, yes, but the opportunities available are very limited. We also have a very large number of qualified candidates per role. I know some of us are we're from Juba University and we graduated, I think, recently. Take the number of people in your class, basically just your class alone. How many of those people graduated with you? Quite a number, right? And you are aware that your previous class, let's say if you are doing a program in IT and you do IT for 4 years, by the time you're in year one, there are people who have graduated. You're in year two, there are people who've graduated, and this goes into hundreds of people, right? So all of you are qualified candidates. You all hold a bachelor's degree, probably in IT. So if you sit down to ask yourself, so where are these jobs that are going to employ all these people, right? Nowhere to be seen. So there are a large number of people who are qualified per role. And that is part of the reasons why competition is very high for the limited opportunities. Another characteristic is the fact that employers receive many applications for one position. From my own experience, I will tell you that just in March, I had advertised for a position of a program officer. And I just needed one person. But I had over 350 applications. So you can imagine, that means that I have to say no to the 349 people. That means including those who are qualified. The current job market is also currently focusing more on skills, experience, and adaptability. So here is what has changed. Qualifications alone are not enough, because you can have 100 people, and when you say you basically need a bachelor's degree, all the 100 will present a bachelor's degree. So yes, what other criteria are you going to use to shortlist these 100 people? So having the minimum qualification alone is not enough. Employers expect more practical skills and proven ability. You cannot have a whole CV narrating theory with no presentation of what you've done in the past. They want to be able to see practical skills and proven ability. What have you been able to do? The recruitment processes have also changed a lot. It has become more rapid and more selective. And of course, it has integrated the use of technology, which is the ATS system. The ATS is an applicant tracking system that filters applications at a very early stage. Most recruiters use the ATS because, like, you have a large number of applications. You don't want to go through the stress of looking at, all these applications. So they use the ATS to filter out those who are not qualified, those who do not meet the requirements. So before your application even reaches the actual recruiter, it goes through the system, and the system is able to go through your CV and tell whether you qualify or not. So you can imagine. For many employers who are still using the manual processes, there are too many applications to do. They don't have a lot of time to screen the candidates. And normally, in about 30 seconds, somebody is able to look at your CV and say, oh, yeah, he's not qualified, she's not qualified. And despite all of that, there is need for them to identify the most relevant candidate as fast as possible, because we said they are trying to solve a problem. They're trying to meet a need that they have. So they need to fill in that position as soon as possible within a given time frame. Now, what this means for you as a candidate is that you cannot be relying on luck or the volume of your applications. You should be very clear, relevant, and aligned to the roles that you are applying for. Your CV and application must show evidence of your value. What are you bringing on the table so that the employer is able to see you and your worth? And you must stand out strategically. If I had 300 applications, when I look at your application, it must stand out. It must scream value. If it doesn't do that, it's tossed aside and move forward to the next applicant. The mistakes that most of us make is that we assume effort alone guarantees success. That, yeah, if I apply for as many of these jobs as possible, yeah, at some point I'll get the results. We also ignore competition. Just because this competition is not direct, just because you don't know how many people are applying for the same role, you tend to ignore. You tend to feel or write your CV and application as if you're the only person who is applying for this job. But if you do the rough statistics just by how many people graduate in a campus annually for the same um, job stage, people already holding, you can imagine the level of competition you have to be dealing with. And that means that you have no room for just applying for the sake of applying. Every application of yours must be able to stand out because you understand that there are other people who are also applying for the same job, even if you don't see them. But in your mind, you should already know that. But some of us ignore this fact. Some of us also overestimate qualifications without clearly highlighting the relevance to the role that we're trying to apply for. Some of us also tend to apply for jobs without understanding what the employer is trying to solve, what needs or what calls for this advert. Without understanding that, we just apply because we are desperate to get these jobs. Like I mentioned before, employers are not just hiring, they are trying to solve a problem with every advert that they put out there. Now, as a candidate who is trying to find their footings in the job market, it's important for you to constantly keep that in mind, that every job is there to solve a problem. Every job exists because something needs to be done. And that thing that needs to be done, there is no internal capacity to do that work. That's why they're trying to find somebody to come and get that work done. There is a gap that needs to be filled, a problem that needs to be solved. So every hiring is a need to solve an existing problem. Okay. So with every advert, employers are asking, can this person do the job effectively? When they pick your application in their hands, these are some of the questions that run into their mind. Can she do that job effectively? And they're not asking you because at this point, they're just looking at your application and CV. That's why these two documents must be able to communicate on your behalf because you don't have the opportunity to defend yourself yet. You've just submitted an application. So they judge based on your submission. Can you do this job effectively based on what you wrote there? Do you have the required skills and experience? Are you able to solve the current problem? Are you able to fit into the team and the organization? Can we trust you to deliver results? So as they go through your application later, these are the questions that they ask themselves. And if they get no for these questions, that is it. They tossed your application. And that's how you lose the opportunity. Maybe you are actually qualified enough. Maybe you can actually do the job. Maybe you could actually blend into the team. You can solve the problem. But you submitted an application that says you can't do the job. And they will not call you to come and defend yourself. No. At that point, it's you against the rest of the applicants. So the opportunity will definitely go to the someone who has been able to demonstrate that, yes, yes, for all these questions, right? So as you're thinking about applying for a role or something, you should be able to question yourself as well. With the volume of applications that the employers have, they don't have a lot of time to spend on every application. They're basically interested in focus on the relevance experience, relevant competencies in terms of the knowledge, ability, and skills. They focus on clarity of communication. If your document is not clear, they'll not look at it twice. They are interested in looking at alignment with the role requirements. And of course, professionalism and presentation. If you do not present your application or CVs properly, yeah, that's a total put off. It will just be tossed. Nobody will look at it twice. No employer will be interested in knowing how many jobs you've applied for, how much effort you put into this application, whether you invested money to go to maybe a cafeteria to log on to internet, they don't focus on that. They don't even want to know. They don't want to know about your personal struggles or urgency. They don't focus on that. They're interested in solving their own problem. So you as a candidate must position yourself as the solution to that problem. Employers are basically looking for reasons to either select or eliminate you. And what this means for you is that you must be clear and relevant immediately. The moment somebody picks your document, yeah, there should be clarity. There should be relevance for the job. If there is none, that is it. You probably had the saying that first impression matters. This kind of impression does not only matters in when you have a physical meeting with somebody. It matters when you are submitting your application to a recruiter. The moment they pick your documents to look at, even just the fonts, the visuals that are there in your document, somebody will just be pissed off because, yeah, you did not even put the fonts properly. You had bold things everywhere, alignment, there is mixture of everything. Yeah, they will toast it, right? They'll not come back to look at it again. Your CV must be able to communicate value quickly. And you must also match what the employer is looking for. So every time you see an advert, you should stop asking yourself, do I qualify? And rather ask yourself, how can I solve that I can solve this problem? And if you're able to demonstrate that, you are able to stand out. You are able to be given an opportunity to now defend. And that's how you get shortlisted and probably invited for also interviews. I don't know if there's anybody in this group who has actually analyzed an advert before. If there's one, please drop a message in the chat. I'll be interested in knowing if there's anybody who has analyzed an advert. That you took your time to understand before you had applied for it. Job advertisements are not just announcements. They are structured communications that tells you what the organization needs, what problem they are trying to solve, what kind of person they are looking for. But for most of us, we don't want to understand these details. We rush quickly through the adverts. We focus on whether or not, what is this title? What is the minimum requirement? Did they say bachelor's degree in communication? I have it done. You go and you apply. Right. We skip all the necessary details and then we just apply. And that's the mistake with most of us. What other candidates do differently is to read carefully and critically through the advert. They're able to break down each section of the advert so that they're clear on what is the requirement. They're able to identify key priorities within the advert and be able to understand from these priorities, what do I have? What don't I have? And because they do that, they're able to understand the expectations of the employer clearly and have a better shot at positioning themselves as the best candidate for the role. An advert has so many parts. So the first element is in terms of the title, where it can give you like the job level. It suggests the experience that is required for the role. It gives direction for the role. So when you see just a job title, it's not just a job title. It communicates a lot of things. The second part is the summary or the job purpose. That explains actually the problem that the role is going to solve. Why that this role exists. The main objectives of this position. Another element is the key responsibilities. It details what you're going to be doing daily, the core functions of the role, the areas where KPIs are going to be developed. KPIs are key performance indicators. Those are formed from the key responsibilities. The other part are the required qualifications, where there is details in terms of the education level, required experiences, technical requirements, that. So those are detailed under the required qualification. For some people, they say preferred, right? What means that there could be the minimum requirement in terms of, the qualification, right? But again, there are other add-ons that could give you a competitive advantage over the rest of the candidates. So in some adverts, you will say like minimum a bachelor's degree in you get, and then they say specialized training or a certification in this area is an added advantage. Meaning, if you have that, certification, it puts you over and above everybody else that has the same bachelor's degree. Right. So you should be able to pick those kind of things out when you go through any advertisement. And then, of course, you have the skills. Which details the key skills that are required for you to be able to succeed on the job. Another key element is in terms of the organizational context. Some people have this as the first section where they talk about the background of the organization or company. Yeah. It's very important for you to understand because as somebody who is applying to this role, you need to know the kind of employer that you're trying to join. Understand what they stand for. What do they do? What products or service do they deal in? The sectors they work under. What are their values? What are their missions? Maybe their values even don't align with yours. This is important because this is the part that helps you to align your application. So as you read any advert out there, try and ask yourself, what is the main problem this role is trying to solve? What skills are most important for this role? What kind of candidate are they describing? Do I align with these expectations? So those are some of the questions you should be asking yourself when you read any advert. This is the job advertisement analysis framework. The first slide, this is basically a breakdown in terms of the key steps where you have the understand, extract, identify, evaluate, and decide. So I've put this in form of a table so it's clear for you to understand. So the first step is to identify role purpose. When you read the job summary, obviously you'll be able to understand, so what is the purpose of this role? So as you go through this, you should be able to ask yourself questions like, why does this role exist? What is the main objective you get? And the expectation is that you have a clear statement that says, this role exists to maybe solve this problem. So you should be able to identify the role purpose, which is the first step when you're looking at an advert. Step 2 is for you to extract all the related responsibilities. And where you can focus on maybe like 3-5 core responsibilities. You don't need to do everything. Because mostly you will find that there are different functions, right? And then under each function, they will give you a couple of tasks that you're supposed to perform, right? So your intention is to focus on some of those key responsibilities. As you do that, you should be asking yourself, so what will I be doing daily? So, and what results are expected of me? And in terms of identify, so you're basically looking at the skills and competences. And these are both technical competences and behavioral skills. What skills are required for you to be able to perform on that job? And how are you expected to perform? Those are in terms of the behavior. So you list those key competences. And then the fourth is for you to identify any keywords in the advert. Keywords are words that are repeated or highlighted or overemphasized throughout the advert. How you will know this is that these words appear multiple times. And also you can tell by basically using your best judgment to tell what seems to be very important based on the purpose of the role. So you can list some of the keywords because these are the words that you're going to use when you're going to tailor your CV and application. The fifth thing for you to do is to define the ideal candidate, where you're able to analyze the requirements and expectations. What kind of person are they describing? What experience level? So you're able to come up with an ideal candidate profile. And once you do that, you are able to assess your fit. And that's step 6. For you to compare your profile with the job requirement. You should be asking yourself, do I meet the requirements? Where are they? Tips. Once you assess your fit, you have a decision to make. A decision to either apply for the role, to improve, where you don't need to apply, but there are key skills that you don't have that you need to improve, and just let go of the opportunity, or for you to reposition yourself. So every advert that you pick in your hand that you're going to apply for, make an effort to walk through these steps before you apply. This is something that should not take you, forever, all day or less than an hour. You're able to analyze a total advert and you're able to decide whether you should apply or not, because you're able to assess your fit against the requirements of the job. It's very important. It's important because this is the only way for you to know how to present yourself as the solution for the employer. If you don't do that, you will apply generically. And your application will always get ignored because it doesn't scream that I am the solution. I am the one that you've been looking for. You should be telling yourself, out of the 300 applications, why should somebody pick interest in my application? If your application doesn't answer this question, why you, then the employer will not be looking at your application. In the early explanations, I talked about keywords. And in just a more detail, I did mention that the keywords are phrases or terms that are used in the advert, and they are mostly repeated and overly emphasized in the advert. And mostly they are the indicators of what the employer values most. So when you're reading an advert, important to pay attention to what are the keywords in this advert. What is it that the employer actually values in this role? On the other hand, when we talk about competences, we're referring to the combination of the skills, knowledge, behaviors, and attitudes that enables the effective performance in that role. So when a person says you don't have the required competences, it means that even if you have maybe the skills, you don't have the right attitude. Or maybe you have the skills, you have the right attitude, but you don't have the correct behavior. They drop you. So it's important for you to understand that all this goes hand in hand. Skills, knowledge, behaviors, and attitudes. When they are looking at you, they look at you in all these aspects, not just in terms of your knowledge, let's say the qualification. No. They're also interested in your behaviors, in your attitude. That's why people do screening. They even go to your social media to check what you're doing on. Right. So it's important for you to understand that. So the competences are in form of technical competences and also behavioral competences. Why it's important for you to understand the keywords and competences is because these are the criteria that are used to screen the applications. And for those employers that employ the use of the applicant tracking system, these are the same criteria which are entered into these systems that helps filter out candidates who don't qualify at a very early stages of the recruitment, even before your application reaches the actual recruiter. It also forms a basis for shortlisting candidates. That's why it's important for you to be able to identify the keywords and use them when you are tailoring your applications or CVs, and also be in a position where you're able to clearly identify the required competences for the job and be able to assess yourself against those required competences. What do you have? What don't you have? Are there things that you need to work on? And then make a decision on whether to apply or not. How you can be able to identify these keywords in the advert is by looking for repetitive words throughout the advert. You can look at the skills listed. You can look at some of the responsibilities. You can look at the sections under qualification. You can look for action verbs in the advert. That's how you tell if that word is an action is a keyword or not. Again, it's important for you to know that some of these are not straightforward, so you have to use your best judgment based on the problem that the role is trying to solve. This will help you to include these keywords in your CV. And you're supposed to ensure that it aligns and fits, not for you to force them into your document. And when you write your experiences in your CV, you are able to describe this keyword. You can also use the same keywords in crafting your cover letter and also align them with your actual skills in both your cover letter and CV. For most of us, the keywords are a new thing, so we don't know them and we ignore them completely because we don't know. And we tend to use a lot of generic terms. And these days, AI has made things worse because everybody goes there and come up with generic things and then put it in their document. It does not sell you because, yes, you fail to prompt it properly. So it does not communicate your value. You also copy paste everything. I've seen instances where people even copy the responsibilities from an advert into their CV, word by word. Right? So honestly, if that was you, how would you look at that candidate? And then we list a lot of skills without evidence of how we use this skill. We list a lot of responsibilities without highlighting any achievement. So the more we do this, we get ignored. I did mention earlier about assessing your fit, and the right term for that assessment is what we call the skills gap analysis. What we mean by skill gap analysis is where we compare what the job requires versus what you currently have. This is you as a person. So you have a list of things that are required by the job. And then you can, against that list, a number of things that you have as a person. And this goes into the competencies that we talked about. This is important because there are so many candidates, like we said before, and most of these candidates apply without checking the alignment. For others, they even overestimate their readiness. And for some, we ignore the missing skills. Some of these skills are really, really key for you to be able to succeed in this role. And then you ignore it and just go ahead and apply. You will not get an opportunity or a feedback because you do not meet the skills. So as you analyze the skills that you have, you should have the requirements for the job. What are the required skills, required experience, competencies, key responsibilities? And you analyze this or compare this against the skills that you have at present, your experience level at present, your key strengths, your past roles or tasks. As you do this, you ask yourself, Do I meet the core requirements? Where do I align strongly? What skills am I missing? And most importantly, can I demonstrate the required competencies? Because this will be the basis for you to make a decision on whether to apply or not. And this is how your decision path would look like. If you have a strong alignment, you're able to apply confidently. If you have a partial alignment, yeah, apply, but ensure that there is a very strong positioning where you're able to clearly indicate that, yes, this is the gap that I currently have, but this is how I intend to cover it. Right. And if, of course, there is a major gap, you should focus on upskilling yourself rather than applying for that job. For most of us, we apply without evaluating our fit for this role. We ignore the required competencies. And some of us even lie about the skills. Right? Let's say they require an IT skill and you don't have it. You are sure you don't have it. But instead of being honest with yourself, you lie. And then you assume that, yeah, I will learn on the job. Now, this will come up because at the end of the day, you will be given an opportunity to demonstrate this skill. And the moment you fail, you lose the opportunity. An easier way to go about all of this is to be honest about your current level of skills. Where you have strengths, highlight those clearly and ensure that they are able to overshadow any gaps that you have. And acknowledge where you don't have the strength. That's why people talk about weaknesses. So you're able to acknowledge that. And we talked about competition. So ensure that you are constantly building relevant skills because that is the only thing that gives you a competitive edge over other people. If you're not able to continuously build yourself, you will be left behind. You have to be able to move, learn new skills, and position yourself properly. I don't know how many of us have heard the concept of blind applications, but it's very common and it's part of the reason why there's a lot of rejections um, in the current recruitment circles. When we talk about blind application, we're talking about applying for jobs without fully understanding the job, using your same CV for multiple roles, right? Ignoring specific requirements and competencies for the job. Applying based on the job title and of course, rushing through the application process because you're interested in demonstrating how many applications you've applied for than the quality of these applications. When you do a lot of blind application, there is no alignment with the job requirements. Your CV is generic and not tailored to this specific role that you're trying to apply for. You are not sure if there's any keywords in this advert, how you should position yourself based on the problem that this role is trying to solve. You don't even communicate your value. The CV does not show your values. And you appear to lack preparation. And as a result, immediate rejection. You don't stand out at all. If you have 300 applications, maybe you are the 300th candidate. Yeah. Your application is not able to make through the screening system. There is a weak positioning between you and the role, and also the organization. And the moment, let's say you get an opportunity to even appear in an interview, you don't have the confidence. You reach there, you don't know half of the things you've put in your document. When you are asked, you even have no idea. Those are some of the dangers associated with all blind applications. And the more you do that, you continue wasting your time and effort. You increase your level of frustration because, you constantly get no. It also reduces your level of confidence, and you could end up missing real opportunities that would have benefited you. So a better approach for you is to, first of all, analyze the opportunity, align yourself, and then apply. Understand the job advert, identify what the role is all about, what are the required skills, competences, and all that. Match your experience to the role, highlight your relevance, show your value, adjust your CV, position yourself, tailor your document, and then go ahead to submit that tailored application letter. Communicate your value. That's a better approach instead of the blind application. What strong candidates do differently is to apply for less roles, but more effectively. They focus on relevance over the quantity because, it doesn't matter how many jobs that I've applied for, but how many of these jobs gave you feedback, gave you an invite for an interview, or being shortlisted and all that. They're interested in customizing every application and also understand the need of the employer so that you're able to position yourself as the solution to them. So the next time you pick up an advert to apply, this should be your checklist. Understand the role. Don't just rush through it. Go through it in details. Reread it several times if you need to. Ask yourself if you clearly understand what the role is about. If you can explain it in simple terms by yourself. Again, identify the employer's need. What problem is the employer trying to solve? What is it the organization is trying to achieve through this position? What are some of the results that are expected from this role? Match your skills. Compare your skills with that of the job requirement. Identify keywords in the advert and ensure that you are able to use those keywords to highlight and include in your CV and application. Customize your CV for the role. Do not use the same CVs for different roles. Customize your CV for every role that you're trying to apply for. Evaluate your reasons for applying. Are you applying because you are aligned or just because the role exists? You just saw a vacancy and yeah, you apply. Apply when there is only a clear relevance between you, the role, and the organization that you're trying to apply for. So this should be your checklist going forward. If you ever find yourself in a place where you've picked out an advert and want to apply, that should be your checklist. As we come to the end of the session, I'd like to leave you with this couple of takeaways that are very important and probably form the basis for some of the things that you're going to touch on for the next sessions. The first thing for you to remember is that the job market is very competitive. There's so many people who are qualified. And as such, you are not just applying, but you are being compared. You are competing with all these other people. Number two is that employers hire for value, not effort. So you must be able to demonstrate your value through your application. Number three, every advert tells you how you should position yourself. Don't apply for any role or you've not analyzed the adverts. Number four, keywords and competence are very critical. And you must be able to reflect both in your application. 5, alignment is everything. You must be able to match the requirements of the job. Your experience must be relevant. There should be clarity between what is required by the job and how you have positioned yourself as the requirement for the employer. And 6, avoid blind applications. Whenever you apply intentionally and not emotionally. Don't rush to just finish the application. Know why you want to apply and ensure that you are selling yourself through your application. And lastly, strategy beats effort. Applying more does not guarantee success. Applying smarter does. And success comes from understanding and positioning. Many people are working hard, but still feel stuck. Not because they lack potential, but because they lack direction in how they present that potential. So from today, don't just apply, understand. Don't just hope, position. Don't just try, align yourself. Because in the end, opportunities are not given to the most desperate, they are given to the most relevant. And relevance is something you can build. Right. So that brings us to the end of the session. And right. Time for any Q&A as we wind up. Thank you so much for listening, and over to you, Emily.
Wow, thank you so much, Brenda. Thank you for the amazing session. I hope we've all learned something. I was also baffled here while I was listening to Brenda, and I am sure each and every one of us has made that mistake when she was talking about you sitting down and analyzing the job description. I was asking myself a lot of questions because most of the time, even we don't we don't look at the job description. We just see they have listed uh, a job, and you just because the title maybe looks familiar with whatever you did, you just rush and apply without even following through to understand if the job is fit for you or not. And that's the first mistake. And before you know, you start complaining, asking yourself questions: what went wrong? What did you do to deserve this? People are getting jobs, your peers are getting jobs, and you're still there. And that's how you realize that it's not even about the recruiter, it's not even about the HR, it's about you yourself. Because if you don't take the right strategies, if you don't become serious, nobody will become serious for you. You might know everything, but now if you don't apply them by being serious, by checking through and going through the entire application, it will be useless because it doesn't matter how many application you do apply. What matters is the content. What matters is what the recruiter needs. And if they don't find anything relevant, they will not. Even most of the application even don't reach the recruiter themselves, because with the ATS, you tend to maybe go against the requirements, and you are cut off before you know. So I guess it's high time for us to change and apply what we have learned today. Let this be a stepping stone. Let this be a turnaround from whatever we've been doing. And from now going forward, at least we know what we can do and how to approach job application. Thank you so much, Brenda. Thank you for this insightful session. We have learned a lot. Personally, I have also learned a lot, and I hope going forward, that's what we are going to apply in our job applications. So, everybody, I hope you got something from today's session, and I just want to welcome you to a Q&A session whereby you can ask your questions if you have any queries or anything you want to ask Brenda. This is the time you can raise up your hand. I will give you the chance to unmute and say something. If you can't, you can also write something on the comment section. I will read through, and the Brenda will be able to guide us and answer accordingly. Back to you guys. And also I've shared the attendance link, so you should go and fill the attendance form accordingly. Any questions are welcome now, please.
As we wait to have some questions, I just want to, for those who are here, I'm going to put up my screen one more and then I just clarify something on the assignment. Great. So on your assignment, the instruction says select a real job you are interested in applying for and do a full analysis by answering the following questions. So what this means is that, let's say there is a job advert that you've seen somewhere that you'd like to apply for, right? So that is the one you should use. But if you don't have any, you can use a previous one. And maybe if you don't have an intention of applying for a role right now, then you can just pick any advert that you can use. But let it align with your background so that it's easier for you to follow through. The intention is that from next weekend, which is a Saturday, we are going to cover how we can write our application letters and CVs. That advert already at hand and finish analyzing it so that by Saturday you will get to understand how can you write a proper application letter and how can you tailor your CV. And then you will go ahead and submit that application for those who have an actual role or an advert they want to apply for. But for those who don't have, then it can be just for knowledge purposes, and then you can use the knowledge thereafter. So pick an actual advert that you'd like to apply for. You can check on NGO Forum, on other job notice boards, whatever that you feel you can apply for. If you like, you can use the previous one for those who have applied for previous role. Then you can see where the gaps are based on what you're going to cover and what you submitted as your application and CV. Then you can make an improvement from there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brenda. Still waiting for the questions. Lumumba
James
James,
have a hands up. Yeah.
yes, please unmute and ask your questions.
Okay, thank you so much. First of all, I would like to recognize this forum. Actually, I think it is my first time to actually say a word in this forum. Since the beginning, I've been actually quiet and actually following what is going on. Actually, today it has triggered me to actually voice what I have, particularly for this section. I would like to appreciate Brenda for actually being always vocal and so encouraging. So I can personally say God has really placed you in South Sudan to bless some of us or to actually uplift some of us to another level. And may God be always with you and continue to give you more to share to people like us. Thank you. Secondly, now I was so touched on the point of employment. You seem to be actually human resource somewhere, I guess, about the application that you receive around 350, and you only want one person who is supposed to be the project manager to solve a problem. Now, my actually the question is around like, because we have been talking of the CVs and the cover letters, actually that you are supposed to send to actually stand on behalf of you against all the applicants. Now, my question is, which one do the organization really want between CV and the resume? Because sometimes I actually get confused that, okay, they say send your CV or send your resume through this mail together with your cover letter. Between resume and the CV, okay, assuming two people are actually applying, or all the people are applying, there are those who are applying, sending their resume, and those who are sending their, sending their CV. Which one do the organization really pick? Is it the one with the CV or the resume? Just I need some of the clarity here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, James. And just like I mentioned, next Saturday, so we will get to understand what is a CV and a resume. And you will have a clear distinction between the two. And depending on what the employer wants, that's what you should submit. Because what you should submit depends on the context, right? But in most of like where I work with NGOs, so like the NGO sector, the development sector, international organization, mostly the employers want like a CV, right? But I don't want us to start another session that we're supposed to cover next week, right? But it's not about whether you submitted a CV or a resume. It's about what is in these two documents that tells me whether I should call you for an interview or not. Like I said, you are not there to tell me about you. It is your CV or your resume or your application letter that is going to do that work for you. So if these two documents are not communicating your value, I will drop your application at that stage. Even though you could probably be the best candidate, but you didn't do a good job communicating your value through your documents. So the application, CV and resume are the first things you send out to go and talk on your behalf. So let them be in a proper format that communicates your value. And then somebody will give you the opportunity to go and defend yourself now in the interview. So for me personally, it doesn't matter, except if the employer says submit a CV and you decided to submit a resume. A CV is more detailed. It normally goes into 3 pages or more. A resume is a short document, mainly summary of details about you and your value, right? Depending on what the employer is looking for, that's what you should submit. Don't submit opposite. And if they say either or, choose to submit a CV, because if you do a CV, you have a better opportunity to explain yourself and your value in details, because the resume will basically be like a page or two, but a CV can go even up to 3 pages or more. So it's better you use a CV that you can use to detail how good you are. Just positioning yourself to be the best candidate. Like, always keep in mind that you are competing with over 300 people for this role. So what is it that should make me to look at your application and not the rest of the applicants?
Thank you so much. May God bless you. I've actually learned. Thank you.
Thank you. And you get to learn some more things from next week. Right. Any further questions?
We still have 15 minutes remaining. Any other person with a question? If you don't have any other question, and you have filled your attendance form, you are free to leave. We will be here. Just in case you still have any questions, we are here to answer your questions.